Breaking news, December 17th, 2025. We're getting reports coming in from the Ukrainian front. They concern a collection of images.
And these aren't just any images.
No, not at all. These are raw, so emotionally charged, and just so dangerous to get that they are fundamentally changing how we see this war. These are the unseen images.
They expose a reality on the front line that, frankly, demands scrutiny. You see this incredible courage, but also this deep, deep vulnerability.
Especially for the people trying to document it all. Before we get into what this all means for the war and for, Europe's security long term, subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex.
And I'm Maria.
And in this deep dive by Defense Report, we're going to cut through the noise. We're here for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military tech, and strategic developments.
And today's topic is, well, it's a big one.
It is. We're looking at the conflict in Ukraine across its two front lines. There's the physical one, the trenches where soldiers are fighting, and then there's this other murkier battle.
No, for facts, for information.
Exactly. And we're going to connect that whole struggle directly to this persistent, almost existential problem of Europe's own defense readiness.
Yeah, and what's really compelling about the material you've pulled together is just how broad it is. We're not just looking at, tactical reports. We're seeing it through the eyes of people in the literal crossfire.
Where people like Pulitzer-winning war photographers.
Exactly. And then we have discussions on military censorship and this huge accelerating challenge of AI-driven misinformation. I mean, that directly impacts how we can even verify if something really happened.
We tie it all back to Russia's own strategic weaknesses and, maybe most importantly, why Europe's lack of urgency is such a massive risk.
A huge risk.
Okay, so let's start with the human cost. Our sources really zero in on two incredible photographers, Maxim Dondiuk and Tyler Hicks.
Right. And Dondiuk, he's been covering this conflict in some way since it all started back in 2014.
He's the one who photographed President Zelensky for Time magazine in 2022, right?
That's him. But the image he's most known for, the one that went global, was from near Irpin. It captured just the sheer horror and chaos of the early invasion.
I think I know the one you're talking about. A woman and child.
Yes. Fleeing across the ruins of a massive bridge that Ukrainian forces had just blown. They were under constant targeted Russian fire.
And Dondiuk was right there.
He was. He was photographing this evacuation square where civilians were loading onto a bus and Russian mortars just started deliberately bombing it.
Deliberately. That's the key word here.
Yeah.
This wasn't just an accident.
Not at all. He said there was an Orlan drone, which is often used for artillery spotting, just hovering right over them.
So they knew exactly what they were hitting.
They knew. It was a calculated attack to create panic. He was actually hit by shrapnel in the shoulder during that attack.
Wow. And you have to ask, what motivates someone to stay in that situation?
Well, he's very clear about it. He says he takes these photos to show his hatred of war. He believes every day of conflict is, and I'm quoting here, the worst thing that can happen in life, and that goes for both sides.
So he's a pacifist.
A firm one. He says he could never kill another person. He's there because he feels an ethical duty to witness it, to make sure the rest of us can't just look away.
And then you have the other photographer, Tyler Hicks. What's his story?
Also a Pulitzer winner, known for never, ever using a zoom lens.
Wait, really? So he has to be right there.
Literally standing right where his images place us. That's how his sister described it. And that proximity, it brings out these incredibly visceral details.
Like what?
Well, he captured the total devastation of Bakhmut in May 2023, described seeing it live on a drone feed as personally quite shocking.
I can only imagine.
But maybe the most harrowing image he took was near Makarivka. He saw what he thought was just, a piece of a uniform on the road.
But it wasn't.
No. It was the body of a Russian soldier. And it had been run over so many times that it was impacted to the point that the body had become part of the road.
Oh, my God. That detail tells you everything. It just strips away any romantic idea about war.
It's the ultimate dehumanization.
So, okay, let's shift from that physical front line to the informational one. Because these same photographers, they face challenges from the Ukrainian side, too. Dondiuk is now blacklisted.
That's right. He's barred from the front line, apparently because of public comments he made about censorship.
He got calls from the SBU, Ukraine's intelligence agency.
He did. He said they felt less like a conversation and more like a warning. He now feels his work is seen as hindering Ukraine.
So they're denying access to experienced documentarians, but letting in, what, bloggers?
That's his point. People with no knowledge of the ethics are getting approved for press pools while he's shut out.
And that's a huge problem, right? I mean, if you're fighting for freedom and democracy, you can't be censoring your most credible witnesses. Isn't that a weakness Russia can exploit?
It's absolutely a strategic vulnerability. It's that classic tension between operational security and democratic ideals. But, as big a problem as that is, it's nothing compared to the external threat.
Generative AI.
Exactly. Hyper-realistic synthetic media. This is where the whole concept of truth just gets messy.
How so? Because for years, open source intelligence, OSINT, has been crucial.
It's been the bedrock. The basic idea was if you can locate it, it's probably real. Geolocation gave you credibility.
But now, AI can just fake it. Create a hyper-realistic image that's geographically consistent.
It's getting there, and fast. The big risk is the collapse of trust in any visual evidence. An adversary could generate convincing fakes faster than analysts can debunk them.
So even if you can prove where a photo was taken, you might not be able to prove it's real.
That's the epistemic tension. OSINT is built on transparency, on repeatable proof. AI gives you a probable answer, but it doesn't show its work. We saw this when that AI Grok misidentified photos of the National Guard in LA as the Afghanistan evacuation.
It just saw uniforms and sleeping bags and missed the entire context.
And that's the danger. Misplacing context in a fast-moving crisis could be catastrophic.
Okay, let's pivot to the bigger strategic context here. Russia's systemic failures.
Yeah.
Because this is why Western support for Ukraine is so impactful.
Our sources point to 5 core failures in the Russian system. And it's not just bad planning, it's structural.
First is Putin's total control.
Right.
It stifles any honest feedback.
Exactly. No one can deliver bad news. Second, their post-Soviet military reforms just failed. And third, they can't attract talented young people because senior officers won't delegate authority.
So you have junior officers who can't think for themselves.
Which is a disaster in modern warfare. But the last 2 points are about the industrial rot.
Corruption.
Pervasive corruption. A Russian military prosecutor admitted that at least 1/5 of the entire defense budget was just stolen.
1/5.
And some officials think it could be as high as 2/5. So the tank you need either has missing parts or it breaks down because the maintenance money was pocketed.
It's the definition of a Potemkin military. A hollow facade. And that's what makes every dollar of Western aid so much more effective. You're fighting a system that's sabotaging itself.
That's the key takeaway for you, the listener. Think about the scale of the aid. Washington sent around $66 billion by late 2022. That's more than 11 times Ukraine's entire 2021 defense budget.
But it's not just about the money or the HIMARS. The training is just as important.
Maybe more so. Programs like Operation Orbital train over 22,000 Ukrainian recruits. They taught junior officers and NCOs to think critically, to make decisions on their own.
Which is the exact opposite of the Russian model.
Precisely. A Western-trained Ukrainian officer loses comms, they adapt and continue the mission. A Russian officer in the same spot often just freezes. It creates a much more resilient force.
Even with that resilience, though, the human cost is just, it's staggering.
The numbers are hard to even comprehend. The UL Losses Project, for example, has documented by name over 81,000 Ukrainian fighters killed as of late 2025.
And that's alongside almost 86,000 missing in action.
Right, so you're looking at over 167,000 casualties just on their side. The brutality is just inescapable.
Which brings us to Europe. And the urgency here, the sources are pretty clear. that complacency on the continent is a critical threat.
The numbers are stark. The UK's defense spending dropped from over 7% of GDP in the 50s to barely 2.2% in 2023. This created what they call a hollow force.
A hollow force.
Yeah. The UK had at one point maybe a week's worth of artillery ammo. Germany had only 2 days worth.
2 days. The economic engine of Europe had 2 days of fighting capacity.
Right.
It's genuinely shocking.
And that's why Ukraine faced that acute shortage of 155mm shells in early 2024. Europe had simply stopped making what it needed for a major war.
But we are seeing a shift in mindset, aren't we? With some leaders, anyway.
Definitely. Look at France's Emmanuel Macron. He went from saying the West shouldn't humiliate Russia to now arguing that nothing should be ruled out to ensure Russia's deceit.
Strategic ambiguity.
It's a huge pivot, and it's necessary.
So what's the final takeaway for Europe's future, tying this all together?
The conclusion from our sources is very clear. If this war ends without a convincing defeat for Russia, Moscow will just look to its next target.
It's not paranoia. Putin genuinely believes Russia has a rightful role to exert power far beyond its borders.
Right. So for them, this war is about correcting a historical mistake.
So defending Ukraine is, in essence, defending all of Europe. Lisbon, London, Berlin, it's all connected.
It is, which means the only real path to long-term security is neutralizing Russia as a threat. And since diplomacy seems impossible right now, that leaves military deterrence as the only option. It's just
The price that has to be paid.
the price that must be paid for sharing a continent with Russia.
So what stands out, really, is this link. The indispensable work of war photographers on the ground, the growing threat of synthetic media making truth irrelevant, and how all of it connects to supporting Ukraine now to guarantee Europe's security later.
Absolutely. The material shows European lethargy has been a decades-long problem. The real question for every nation west of Poland is, are they finally willing to pay the price of preparedness? Or will they wait for the infinitely higher price of fighting a war they weren't ready for on their own soil?
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.